Ladies and gentlemen, it's 5:30, so we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. I'd like to thank everybody for coming and being with us for our May board meeting. I know with a rescheduled date and it being the last week of school, a lot of people have a tremendous amount on their plates, so we're going to do our best to try to keep things flowing and get you back to what you got. Before we dive into the agenda, we've got just a couple, or really just one announcement. Our work session for June the 2nd, we're not going to have a quorum available, so we're not going to be having a work session on June 2nd. We'll put a cancellation notice out and properly advertise that, but we will have our regular meeting coming back on the third Monday in June. So we will be having our meeting in June, but we will not be having a work session on June the 2nd. Second is for everybody that's here with kids that are about to graduate from high school, on behalf of the Board of Commissioners, congratulations. I know tomorrow night's graduation, and we're excited to see everything that's there. I know we've got at least one school employee that's probably even more so looking forward to those kids being out so they can have access to the building. So we'd definitely like to say congratulations. And my wife being a school teacher, she'll say they're yours for the next few months and you'll realize how great your teachers actually are. So, but with that and the meeting called to order, I'm going to call on Charles Reese to lead us in our invocation and prayer, and then following that, Ms. Christy Easterwood from 911 to do our pledge of allegiance.
Let's bow our heads in prayer. Father God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your grace and your mercies that you bestow on us each and every day. Father God, we thank you for the Pickens community, and we thank you for our leaders. Continue to give them the wisdom and empathy, Lord, as they make tough decisions, Lord, that benefits the well-being of this entire community. We ask these in your son's name, Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Next item is the approval of our agenda. We do not have any amendments that I'm aware of. With that, I know the agenda has been provided, and I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
So, second.
Second, any discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is employee recognitions. We did have one employee that has a 20-year service, but they're not able to be with us tonight, so we're going to hold that until our June meeting so that we can recognize a 20-year county employee. They will be with us in our June meeting. But I have another employee recognition I'd like to have presented, but I've asked Miss Miranda McDowell if she would to make that presentation.
Right. Okay. I would like to take this opportunity to recognize an extraordinary member of our finance team. She is always going above and beyond, looking for ways to improve our accounts payable and then some. In 2023, we transitioned into a new accounting system with Tyler Technologies. Since then, not only has she customized many areas and aspects of her accounts payable module, she's also eagerly stayed on top of Tyler Tech's new upgrades and releases, always eager to implement something new. With that, in November, Holly made her rounds to each member of the finance team, seeking their opinions and benefits and successes of the implementation and what Tyler has done for us. Since then, she took that information and she made a submission and nomination to Tyler Tech for the opportunity to win an award, as well as all paid expenses to San Antonio for Tyler Connect Conference, which was last week, and that was a value of $3,100. With that, we were selected as the 2025 Tyler Excellence Award winner for performance and innovation. Pickens County was chosen 1 out of 28 winners out of 120 nominations. It is my honor to present this award that was mailed to us by Tyler to Holly for her outstanding achievement on behalf of Pickens County. With that, I would also like to say thank you for all your hard work and going above and beyond for this organization, because not only do you do it for the finance team, you do it for everybody. You literally touch everyone in this government. You didn't have to get what you did, and I am very thankful for all your hard work.
So,
You wanna take a?
as we're walking around so that we can get pictures with Holly, I will echo, there is nobody that goes more above and beyond. I know we have a lot of incredible employees, but Holly's champions, and he's phenomenal. So, and in case Tyler's trying to recruit you, we want to make sure.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tyler. We really appreciate it. Well deserved. So as she returned from San Antonio, I walked back to try to hear about the story. You know, everybody was oohing and ahhing, and they did all kinds of fantastic things. And I was jokingly saying we don't need her to get a big head, and then Miranda reminded me that there's a chance they could be trying to recruit her. So we decided that that's the wrong approach. I know her husband works for the school system and is here with us tonight as well, and we know she wants to be at home. So but we're very, very thankful for that honor. Next item on our agenda, we do have 3 separate public hearings for tonight. They're all ordinance related. We're going to do those in 3 different portions. That way we can kind of pause for any public comments, and then we'll close each individual one, and then we'll get to the next one. The first one is a public hearing that's an amendment to Article 3 entitled Authorities, Boards, and Committees of Chapter 2 entitled Administration. It's the creation of an airport advisory board. I know if you weren't here for the last few meetings, we have worked and provided a resolution to our representative who presented it to the General Assembly on the abolishment of our airport authority so that the Board of Commissioners could get much more directly involved in the operation of the airport. The governor did sign that into law. The act was signed on May the 13th. So with that, we are now looking to create an advisory board so that we still have the aviation community directly involved with our office to help provide that guidance. So I'm going to turn it over to Bill Wood. Bill's going to do the public hearing portion for this section, and then we'll move through the rest.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening, everyone.
Going backwards. There.
So before we actually get into the airport ordinance itself, we thought it might be a good thing to provide some context on our ongoing ordinance amendment schedule. Because tonight we're considering, or the board is considering, an ordinance that would create the airport advisory board, as Chris said, creation of a substantially enhanced finance ordinance, blessed with some land use regulation enhancements, which will really be a phase 1, some land development regulation enhancements, which will be phase 1 and 2. Phase 2, we are scheduling for regular board meeting on July the 21st, where there'll be more land use material, there'll be more land development material, and there's going to be a lot of work to enhance what we have at our disposal to use to regulate soil and erosion situation in the unincorporated Pickens. And we will also be putting up for consideration a new fire prevention and protection chapter. There is not one right now. So beyond July the 21st, we look at land use and land development, and also buildings and signs, closely related concepts. We're going to be moving toward a unified land use and land development chapter, which basically covers all 4 of those areas. After that, we'll be doing pinpoint modifications based on public input, based on developments, and based on incidents that we have in the field in enforcement. Basically, always looking to improve on relevance, suitability, and effectiveness. Point of this is we're just not going to sit on what we're going to have. We're going to try to make it as effective as possible to achieve the objectives of the commission. Public hearing topics tonight starts with ordinance for the new airport advisory board. Chris pretty much just did the overview, but I'll go back to it again. Basically, the airport, JZP, is operated under the control of Pickens County Port Authority since 2006. As Chris indicated, Governor Kemp signed Act 240 into law. It had the effect of dissolving the Airport Authority and putting the control of the operations of the Airport Authority under the Board of Commissioners. The purpose of creating the advisory board is the commissioners believe that maintenance and operation of the airport will be optimized if it and the Pickens County government are regularly advised by an advisory board comprised of competent and qualified advisors. This will be a 7-member board if adopted. The members will have to be either a resident of the county, a non-resident owner or lessee of an aircraft hangar located at the airport, or the non-resident owner or business executive of an aviation-oriented commercial business enterprise that are located in the county. 3 of these board members will have to be pilots that are either licensed to operate fixed-wings aircraft or rotorcraft, and 1 of the members of the board will be a city county commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to open up for any public comments as it relates to the creation of the Airport Advisory Board. With no public comments on that particular portion, do I have a motion that we close the first public hearing to move through?
So moved. I'll second.
Moving a second, any discussion, questions from the board as we open up for public comments? All right, all in favor? And we'll close the first public hearing. The second public hearing is, as was discussed, Bill had discussed the finance chapters. There are 2 chapters related to finance. One chapter is Article 4 entitled Finance of Chapter 2 entitled Administration. Currently, that particular ordinance only deals with 1 single item, and that's our fiscal year. It does not cover any of the other in ordinance. They've been covered by policy and procedure only. Tonight, we'd like to try to help work toward codifying the processes to make sure that we have an ordinance related, but it also deals with the creation of Chapter 3 entitled Finance, which would replace that deletion of the other chapter. And for that portion of our public hearing, Ms. Miranda McDowell, our Chief Financial Officer, is going to give us a presentation on that.
All right, so the new finance ordinance, as Chris explained, creation of Chapter 3 entitled Finance and the deletion of current Section 2-301 entitled Fiscal Year from Article 4 entitled Finance of Chapter 2 entitled Administration. So currently, the existing finance section, the only section that exists is Section 2-301 Fiscal Year. The fiscal year for the county shall commence on January 1 and conclude on December the 31st. The new finance ordinance has key components, which number 1 is general matters regarding finance. Number 2, fiscal year. Number 3, the financial reporting. 4, budgeting. 5, maintenance of the general fund balance. 6, administration of revenue. 7, audits. 8, protocols for procurements. 9, financial assets. And 10, debt. The new finance ordinance includes, but not limited to, the financial reporting portion, which is basically defined with financial reporting is essential in maintaining credibility, ensuring resources are used wisely, and achieving long-term goals. Budgeting standards promotes fiscal responsibility, enhances transparency, and helps prevent mismanagement and overspending. Revenue and procurement, having strong guidance in how revenue is collected and how public funds are spent, results in better services for the community and sustainability. All of which are essential for transparency and assisting leadership with decision-making when considering long-term goals.
With that, do I have any public comments related to the finance ordinance? I think me personally, as the budget officer for the county, by definition, by my title, I'm excited to know that we've got additional rules, regulations that we make sure everybody's following to a T, because it does nothing but help us be more accountable on that. No other public comments? Any board comments? Do I have a motion to close public hearing number 2?
So moved.
Move in a second. Any questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we'll move into public hearing number 3. Public hearing number 3 is an amendment of Chapter 38 entitled Land Development Standards. There are multiple changes within that particular portion and amendments to Chapter 67. We're doing those both as combined because they both kind of interact back and forth with each other. In this particular section, we'll go through and kind of define what those particular changes are. There's a couple of different code sections that relate to, because it does have some chapters that include zoning. State law provides that there is a public hearing necessary prior to consideration of those. That public hearing is defined in OCGA 3666-4, where it states that any zoning decision provided for a public hearing must be advertised 15 days to 45 days prior to the meeting. That was accomplished. Also, within our ordinance in Chapter 67-15, in our ordinance, it states that except for any such matters initiated by the Board of Commissioners, in which cases the public hearing may be conducted before the Board of Commissioners. Several of the public hearings in zoning go before the Planning Commission before they come, but any that is initiated by the board can be held before the board. So that's why we're the ones conducting the public hearing. Chapter 38 in our chapter also calls for the same thing, that the rules and regulations for a public hearing and discerning anything that deals with any type of a zoning matter. So with that, I'm going to open up for Bill to come back up and to do a presentation. There's a little bit more meat in this one because there's more specific changes in the category.
Thank you, Chris. Yes, this will be just a tad longer than the first two. As is a case of all three of these topics that the public hearings are on, we are basically making this presentation on behalf of the board. And the one that's coming up, the commissioners have specifically asked that we describe the motivation behind some of the changes that will be taken up for consideration. So we'll basically start with Chapter 67, land use intensity districts and maps, sometimes referred to as zoning. That's not a term used often in our existing chapters, Chapter 67, but synonymous from a general standpoint. What the items that will be up for consideration this evening for the commissioners will be the elimination of one listed land use intensity district, the addition of 10 new listed land use districts, and the elimination of 2, prescription of land use treatment standards respectively applicable to the new listed uses, and then modification of the land use treatment and standards applicable to 2 other existing listed land uses, expansion of opportunities for applicants to avail themselves of streamlined procedures to change higher density land use intensity districts to lower density land use intensity districts, significantly clarified and enhanced administration and performance enforcement provisions, and new provisions related to procedures and definitions to enable the first 6 items. Land use regulation for purposes of the discussion tonight, any purpose for which a building, a structure, a tract of land, or an area of land is being utilized at a particular point in time, or any process, activity, occupation, business, or operation being carried on at a particular time in a building or structure or on any tract of land or area of land, both a purpose and a process. And that's something that to keep in mind as we go through some of these, because some of these changes basically will affect any purpose or any process or both. And it's a very important aspect of not only tonight, but also the overall administration of Chapter 67 and land use. So basically, land use regulation, the way we look at it, is adopting, maintaining, and applying relevant, suitable, and effective land use standards to protect and preserve the public's safety, health, and quality of life within unincorporated Pickens County. That is the way that we define it. That's how we administer it. That's how we enforce it. That's how the commissioners make decisions about it. The approach existing Chapter 67 boiled down at a very high level. It was created this way and it's worked ever since. There are land use intensity district zones, sometimes referred to listed land uses, land use treatment standards for the land uses that are in various land use intensity districts, And then there are procedures and definitions to enable those first three things. So that's the framework, and it will continue to be as it is right there. Right now, there are 11 land use intensity districts, agricultural, small agricultural, and you can basically see them up there. We'll look at basically which ones are more prominent. That's what our last land use intensity district map looks like. So everything that is quote unquote zoned everywhere in the county is represented on this map. Thought we would put this in here just to provide some context as to what exists in the county. Basically, in our records, there are 137,000, a little over 137,000 acres in Pickens County, unincorporated Pickens. The agricultural district takes up 65,478 of those acres. The majority of them, almost approaching 50%. Rural residential, 45,000 acres and a little bit. SRPC, which is a suburban residential planned community. Venture's an example of this, Big Canoe's example of this. 8,774 acres. Highway business, 6937. Suburban residential, 5941. And industrial, 1773. This is something that we keep in the back of our mind. When you look at the number of lots that are in each one, then that'll bring you to what the average size of each lot is in these categories, and then you can compare that to the minimum. These are very interesting statistics, at least to me. When an example, when you look at something like suburban residential, which has a 1 acre minimum, but yet the average size is over 12 acres. And there's lots of things that can be garnered from that statistics, moving in different directions. But anyway, it's something that we keep in the back of our mind all the time. So listed land uses, we have 126 as of right now. 10 will be considered to be added, 2 will be deleted. That will leave 134. We expect this to change significantly on July the 21st as we add a lot more clarity to the list, a lot more specificity to the list, and as we categorize the list into different categories for more, to basically better enable administration, like commercial, like residential, and just basically put them in categories. The land use treatment standards, there's land use permissibility. That means there's an automatically permitted use. Conditional, land use conditional permissibility, special use, and that requires a conditional special use permit, and land use impermissibility, which is a prohibited use. In each land use intensity district, as it relates to any particular listed land use, these will apply as you see. That's basically the framework. You have the land use lists in our table that go vertically, horizontally. You've got land use districts, and then you've got the land use treatment standards underneath them. I chose, for no particular reason, funeral homes and mortuaries as an example. And you can see there that there's conditional use requiring commissioner approval to issue a conditional special use permit in neighborhood commercial and highway business. They're permitted. In industrial, there's a conditional use there, but there's prohibitions in unincorporated Pickens for the rest of them. But that's basically the setup and how it works in the table. When we walk through the changes for the new land use intensity districts that are being considered, there'll be a treatment for each one. So there'll be a frame as it relates to each one of these when we walk through it. This is all based on feedback from the public, and this feedback comes regularly. It comes to them, it comes to staff, and it's just something we and the commissioners encounter all the time. This public feedback, and this comes from both legacy residents and it comes from new residents, people that have been here for a long time, people whose families have been here literally for a century or more, and then people that move up here, a lot of them from south of us, in terms of Metro, Cobb, all of them down there. And most of the feedback comes in terms of concerns that are expressed. And these concerns are about overly built up areas, as is defined by high building density and high population density, having an undesirable impact. The overly built up areas, the viewpoint of that differs from place to place to place to place. But an overly built up area in Cobb County is different from what's considered an overly built up area in Cherokee, or in Holly Springs, or in Pickens County. It's just basically driven by the citizenry, what the citizenry desire, how they think, what kind of environment that they believe they need to have to live in that presents the best safety and welfare and quality of life for them. And the commissioners tell us, we as staff are all driven basically by what we hear from the public, especially when we hear it almost all the time. On the other side of the equation, you've got desirable growth. Desirable growth creating a desirable impact. And then you got the flip side of people that come in and talk to us, not expressing the same concerns that the public expresses here. They're usually, almost always, not from here. And it comes along the lines of, just as an example, well, I can't make my margins if I can't have 65 homes in here. That's typically the kind of thing we hear on the flip side. So the BOC's duty regarding land use regulation. As we've said, paramount duty of the Board of Commissioners is to protect and preserve the public safety, health, welfare, and quality of life in Pickens County. That comes with it an obligation to do it in the confines of our sources of revenue, the vast majority of which is coming from the people that are talking to us either in the form of property taxes or sales taxes. And we're obligated to do it with transparency. Now, the scope of it though, it's only in unincorporated Pickens County. Anything that we impose as an ordinance, any regulatory standard, does not apply to any municipality located in Pickens County, only unincorporated Pickens County. So, in the context of land use regulation, to protect and preserve the public safety, health, welfare, and quality of life in Pickens County, we basically are dealing with overly built up areas versus desirable growth, undesirable impact versus desirable impact. The perception here from the commissioners is the public's concerns are well founded, they're persuasive, and even beyond being well founded and persuasive, they're compelling in terms of compelling action. And that basically is the foundation for what will be, a lot of what will be considered later by the board. So the duty is employ all feasible means within unincorporated Pickens County to deter overly built up areas, to encourage desirable growth, and that is the foundation for a lot of the things that you will now see over the next few minutes, and for the items that will be taken into consideration. So the land use related items up for BOC consideration. Elimination of one land use intensity district, that being urban residential. Urban residential, there are some parcels out there that have that designation. They will not be affected by this because they exist. Urban residential district, as is described in the code, are districts intended to provide urban low density, residential labeled urban low density. I don't quite get it, but urban. And with those districts being served by sanitary sewer and public water, with a minimum lot size of less than 1 acre or 0.75 acres. That is the land use district that is going to go away if so adopted by the commissioners this evening. So that will be gone. Then we will have 10 land use intensity districts as, again, if adopted. The addition of 10 new listed land uses and elimination of 2 existing listed land uses. The new ones, commercial subdivisions major, commercial subdivisions minor, homeless shelters, public uses, residential subdivisions major, residential subdivisions minor, sewer infrastructure construction, utility infrastructure excluding sewer infrastructure and telecommunication towers, and utility infrastructure construction. Going to delete 2 if adopted, that being public and semi-public uses. Really, that category that listed use as being eliminated, would be eliminated, is being replaced by public uses only. This has to do with what is up for consideration with regard to sewer infrastructure that you'll see in a couple of minutes. And mobile homes. Now, the reason mobile homes are being eliminated is because this is a term that exists technically to describe units that up until June the 15th, 1976. So we thought it was time to basically take it off the books. Manufactured homes are regulated though, and there's nothing that changes that. Now, June 15th, 1976 is 2 weeks after I graduated high school. So if there's no stronger testament to looking at something and taking it off the books, then that I can offer up as at least a little bit of value from this whole program.
I started potty training about that time.
You weren't even around at that time.
I was, they weren't.
Prescription of, all right, so we have the 10 unit listed standards, prescription of the respective land use treatments of them. Commercial subdivisions minor, which would basically be permitted in neighborhood commercial, highway business, and industrial. Commercial subdivisions major, and we'll get to a little bit later the difference between the two. Those would be conditional in neighborhood commercial, highway business, and industrial that would require conditional special use permit. Retail subdivisions minor would be permitted in the first 7 items there, and obviously excluded anything related to commercial. Residential subdivisions major, the permissives with regard to minors become conditional/special as it relates to residential subdivisions major. Homeless shelter, conditional and highway business. We were in court about 2 years ago over a homeless shelter situation. It was then obviously an unlisted land use, and there's an administrative procedure for handling that, but that's what it is an administrative procedure. And that's what's on the books now. We thought it was certainly in everyone's best interest to give this some specificity as it relates to the commissioners being involved in this on the front end, adding it as a listed, new listed use would do this. Now that also in general sort of describes a lot of the things that will be considered on July the 21st, because we want to basically minimize the space of unlisted land uses and get it out of that administrative category. It'll just do everybody a favor, including the applicants, including people that want to do this through a much smoother process. Utility infrastructure excluding sewer infrastructure, that's everywhere. Utility infrastructure construction, that's everywhere. Public uses, basically government uses, that's just replacing public uses and semi-public uses, that's everywhere. Sewer infrastructure, nowhere as a land use. Sewer infrastructure, construction, nowhere as a land use. And modification of the land use treatment standards applicable to existing land uses. Dwellings, multifamily, becomes prohibited as opposed to conditional in neighborhood commercial, and becomes conditional as opposed to permissive in highway business. Again, this affects situations moving forward as opposed to designated places now that can use the C or the P. Adult businesses, no local government, because of case law that's just around in many places, can prohibit it entirely. There's a sentiment to do that, but we can't. So we're going to basically, if adopted, move it as a conditional use from highway business to industrial. And in doing so, we're following several other counties that have done this, including Forsyth, to make it more restrictive because of the differences between the two types of land use intensity districts. Expansion of opportunities for applicants to avail of streamlined procedures, change higher density land use intensity districts to lower density land use intensity districts. We did this setup about 3 months back, where we created this procedure, and it basically allows any application seeking to change to ag, which is the lowest density land use intensity district there is. But the underlying portions we added to this to make it easier for people to basically get this change done more quickly, whoever initiates it. And so the underlying pieces, portion, augment the portions that are already there. And it's just something, again, to encourage lower density. Try to do everything possible to encourage lower density. Significantly clarified and enhanced administration and enforcement provisions. Back on May the 5th, we made changes to ordinances dealing with enforcement, with signs, with businesses, with buildings. And we create basically a consistent framework for enforcement all the way across the board. This will continue on with land use and land development, and then continue on beyond that until everything basically is in a consistent framework, which means that there'll be 14 common characteristics related to this in all chapters, all driven by chapter 1, which is the general administration enforcement provision. There'll be specific violations that are consistently viewed in all of them, consistent penalties and punishment for violations in all. Much more clarity in dealing with continuing violation. It's encounter too frequently situations that go on for days and days and days and days and days and days. We're going to basically create means, if adopted, to deal with that much more effectively. And then other available actions to make it clear when the commissioners, through Chris as the chairman, want to seek other actions to basically serve the purpose of regulating things, that regulating violations can do things beyond the penalties, like we had to do in the homeless shelter situation before, where we had to go to Superior Court and get an injunction to stop certain things that were going on. We were able to do it successfully, but this will basically make it much more clear for people involved in the situation on the other side, for staff, for the commissioner, for the courts as well. New provisions and definitions to enable items 1 through 6. What I chose here is basically subdivisions as an example, described in terms of it being both a thing and a process, as that last piece indicates, or it's really indicated as thread throughout the whole thing. But it drives toward a clear conclusion with regard to it is either constituting the process or the land that's been subdivided or is in the process of being subdivided. When with this new listing, if adopted, only an application for a conditional use permit must be submitted to the Planning and Development Department for consideration by it and the Planning Commission and the Board of Commissioners, if there is permissibility for conditional use in there. That's all that's required. If there is not a place or designation for use, conditional permissibility in a particular land use district, two things will have to be done. An application for the land use intensity district map change, and also the application for the conditional special use permit. That can happen at the choice of the applicant, either concurrently or sequentially. The subdivision being regulated as a land use does not nullify the regulation of subdivisions in Chapter 38 as a development standard, so both of the standards have to be met. which basically means that the subdivision application approval process is still in place at 38. And they, basically, there will be some overlap there, but there's also some differences. This, prior to this, well, the existing situation is this: subdivision play such an important role here. Good subdivisions play a great positive role here. An attempt to create something that's not quote unquote a good subdivision doesn't play such a positive role. And again, we've got local developers that, I mean, they're great to work with. They're trying to do the right thing, but we got other people that come in that don't. And the problem that we have existing now with subdivisions is limited to the subdivision approval process, which is just an administrative process. However, regulated as a land use, it also becomes a matter for the board to consider. And to me, the staff, that's a very important thing, and I think it's important for them. You want to go on into land development, it's only one. Land development, minor subdivisions and major subdivisions. 5 or 7 or fewer for a minor now become 5 or fewer. And that's the major change there. So thank you guys for sitting through that.
So as we get ready for the public comments, on the last slide where it goes from 7 to 5, one of the major reasons behind that is to match it the same as environmental health. The state, under environmental health, classifies a minor subdivision as 5 or less, and then major is above 5. Our standards within our ordinance prior to this revision, if approved, made it different, so there was a constant confusion for anybody that had a subdivision process that was going on, because they would be told 5 by one, 7 by the other. So we're trying to match those two together so that it's consistently applied and there's not a constant back and forth on the flip side of that. I know that there's probably some board comments that we'll make as we go, but I'm going to open it up for public comments first, if there's anyone from the public that has any comments they'd like to make on this section.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
When it comes to the overly built up areas that they were referring to, what type of feedback are you guys getting that's relating to that? Is it about subdivisions and businesses, or what types of complaints?
Complaints on high density in general, where it's becoming a completely changed environment. People that, and fortunately, in unincorporated Pickens County, to this point, we've not seen that occur on a large scale. It's been a very small scale, if any. What the concerns are is they've watched it happen to all the counties around us because there were no guardrails, for lack of a better term, in place that allowed it to expand. And so the municipalities continually expanded into the unincorporated areas, not by annexation, but by just having the same type of development that was going on in unincorporated counties. So someone, I don't remember, in one of the meetings that we had, made a comment that we're 30 years in advance of what happened in some of the counties that Metro sprawled into. So, and I'm not trying to pick on any individual county, but we'll say Cherokee and Forsyth, because as Metro moved into Cherokee and Forsyth, you saw the unincorporated areas start getting built up significantly. We have an opportunity to be ahead still at this stage, and I think it's consistent with what we hear on a constant basis, whether it's in meetings, social media, talking to people in public, or the outcry of some of the others. So it's been a very public policy that we've tried to follow and adhere to in almost every vote that this board has been a part of. Now, we try to take every single case and look at the facts as they exist as to the low density and the outcry from the public. Now we're trying to take the efforts to make sure that we're codifying what we can codify in consideration of the ordinances. I do know that as this is being presented to the public, the staff has actually worked individually with each commissioner. Because we're a 3-person board, we can't collectively be in here together to work on it, but the individual staff members from the Planning and Development Office and Mr. Wood himself have been working directly with each commissioner to kind of get feedback from what they're hearing from citizens, so that they can incorporate those into what they're looking into to help try to create that. Hopefully that answers. I know that's a ramble answer. Are there any other public comments?
We have a question.
Yes, sir.
How do you balance what the county's doing now incorporated with what the city of Jasper's done? Because they don't appear to take consideration of the impact on the schools, emergency services, yet they keep allowing some of these high-density places.
And I think that's the challenge in every county. When we talk about what's happened, we only have the authority in unincorporated Pickens County. Inside the city limits, the law's pretty clear that they have their own separate authority as a municipality. The law's really more in their favor when it comes to annexation if they can prove, unless we really have a strong case that can be made against annexation to continue expanding out. I wish I could give you an answer. I don't know that we necessarily differ as much as what it may appear. I think there was just so much that occurred all at one time that the growth blew up inside the incorporated boundaries. But we also represent a county that has 3 municipalities in it. You only see that expansive explosive in one area, the other 2 we haven't. So I'm not saying that to say anything negative, but we know that the one thing we can try to protect and preserve is unincorporated so that it does stay rural, which is in the sense of enjoying the mountains, enjoying larger tract lands, the small farms, things of that nature. People do still have property rights, and so they still need to have the opportunity to do what's permissible within it. But by creating, and I use the term guardrails just because it's the easiest one I can come up with, by putting the guardrails in place, keep us from looking back in 20 years and talking to whoever's in our shoes at that point in time, saying, man, if we had only, this is our one chance to try to hold that up. And that's one of the reasons I think we've made a pretty consistent voting record amongst the board. Now we're trying to take and apply some of those things into ordinance that kind of show and define some of that. There are some things that are permissible that they're, I don't want to use the term grandfather, but if you already have a property that is in this zoning category, then you're allowed within that. It affects what new development could be potentially coming. Any other public comments? Yes, sir.
Chris, would a property owner have a vested right if they've already expended money toward a particular use within their category?
I think it would be a case by case. I think that's one that legal would have to review into the vested right as to what the money was spent on and how far it got into. I think you're kind of getting into the legal term when you get into the vested right, depending on how it's defined as to what was spent, why it was spent, what those different areas are. I think each property is going to have its own unique difference on how far they are in a process, or did they just buy land, or what is the defining characteristic of that particular property. But I do believe that would be illegal, that we would need to run through case by case to make sure from a legal perspective on the individual case as to where that fit within when that was there. And I don't think it's clearly defined, other than if you're already in that use, then there's, if you already have a conditional use within your zoning classification, then that conditional use would still apply. But in the vesting rights as to what could actually go on to that with a conditional use, it would need to be looked at.
If it were a currently permitted use within that.
A currently permitted use within, if it could meet all the other requirements, then in my opinion it would be, but I don't want to, without the specifics of it, I don't think I can answer individually a particular project. Sometimes something could be permitted, but then something else is prohibited the possibility of, and I think that's where we would have to have that reviewed case by case. So I don't want to overly step into that one. And for sense of clarity, we did move our meeting from a Monday to a Thursday, and our attorney represents another county that meets on the third Thursday. So we're here. We have met with and spoke with frequently to be prepared. And actually, I got a text from her just a minute ago. That's the reason we're going through the hearing, and you don't see her physically sitting in the room with us. So, any other comments from the public? Board comments?
I just want to thank Bill and Miranda and Charles and everyone else who has worked on these for doing such a good job getting all these together. I know it's been a ton of work, so thank you.
I think if anybody knew the number of hours that they have gone back and forth, and I know when we present, this is phase 1, phase 2 will be in July, the scope and magnitude of what all has to be involved in piecing those things together is tremendous. I think that Bill had emailed everyone kind of a draft of a working draft on one thing. it was at 10 o'clock on a Sunday night, and I was kind of laughing. I was at home with my wife when I got it, and I said, here's the problem. Bill doesn't do this from home, so that means he's physically sitting at the office at 10 o'clock this Sunday night working on what he's doing right now. So he's definitely took it to heart. Charles and Ashley and the rest of the team, Jerry and Paula and I mean the whole crew has worked, and then Lisa and Miranda ended up inheriting the public side of things on the clerk side of office to go through, but I think it's been a big, huge team effort. So I agree.
It's really, really easy for a politician to sit somewhere and say promises made, promises kept, right? Everybody hears that all the time. And gosh almighty, all three of us ran on a platform of trying to preserve Pickens County's rural nature. But the truth is, not a one of us did this, right? It's them. We say a sentence and then it turns into thousands of hours, not thousands of hours, but hundreds of hours worth of work. So I
can say you probably have hit thousands of hours.
It's really easy to sit up here, but we're not taking credit. Yeah, you guys did a ton of work, and it's greatly appreciated.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I think I made my comments earlier in talking about this. This is just a consistent effort of what we've had as practice is now we're trying to codify it into ordinance. We're trying to begin the process of codifying certain things in the ordinance while still being sensitive to allowing people to still be happy to live here, but yet not impact the people around it as much as we can. So we'll continue to address that particular. But with that, do I have a motion to close this public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Moving a second. Any other discussion or questions that you may have? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, well, we'll close the motion, close the public hearing and move on through the remaining parts of our agenda. We did have a tabled rezone from our last meeting. We did have a rezone request that was presented. It's RZ 190878. Presented from Mr. Abbas Al-Sahidi on Allred Mill Road. It's a request to move a 19.84 acre parcel from ag to state residential, parcel 053066. The application originally came in December the 6th from the applicant. I know that there was some delays getting it to the point of the public hearing, but a public hearing was held before the Planning Commission on March the 10th, 2025. During that, the presentation was made, and the intended purpose of the rezone request at that time, if approved, was to develop a 5-acre lot subdivision. One of the reasons we tabled to this month is the applicant has sent further that they've tried to move that to a 3, with a site plan that was a 3 lot subdivision, but at the same estate residential classification. But after reviewing the application and receiving the staff report where staff stated it met all requirements for approval, the Pickens County Planning Commission voted 0 yes and 4 no for the approval. So they essentially voted 4 no on the request for that tract to be rezoned to estate residential. So as it comes before us, do I have a motion from the floor either to accept the recommendation from the Planning Commission for denial or otherwise?
Make a motion we accept the recommendation for denial.
All right, motion to deny. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Do I have any further discussion? None, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, that motion carries. We'll move on to the next item on our agenda is the consideration and approval of a certification of an anticipated millage rate. This is new for this year. I know last year the state approved House Bill 581, and in that kind of changed the whole game for property appraisals and property assessments. But one of the conditions that came from that, and then the follow-up bill that was this year that cleaned up a little bit of House Bill 581, provided for a requirement for the board to establish an estimated rollback rate prior to the mailing of your tax assessment notice. This is not for the tax bill, this is for the tax assessment notices prior to those going out, that there need to be a set rollback rate of that would be established prior to that taking place. This will not be the official rate. We haven't received the full digest to consider yet. We will then come back, once that's been received prior to the billing process, and establish the actual millage rate at that point in time. But with that in mind, we have reviewed the information, the preliminary information that the board has determined that a rollback of 2.6114 mils in local option sales tax revenue is appropriate and necessary. That would result in an estimated net millage and operation rollback rate of 7.234 mils. So therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Commissioners of Pickens County would set an estimated net maintenance and operation rollback millage rate of 7.234. Be it further resolved in this particular resolution that the estimated rollback millage rate is hereby certified to the Pickens County Tax Commissioner and the Chief Tax Appraiser, which should be included in the annual notices of assessment in House Bill 581. I know that there have been a lot of correspondence coming from the state that's been kind of explaining these new processes, but we need to make sure that this is done prior to that process going forward. So with that, do I have a motion authorizing me as chairman to sign a resolution establishing that the county is setting an anticipated estimated rollback rate of 7.234 mils?
So moved.
I'll second the motion.
Move in a second. Do I have any further discussion or questions? With none, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, that motion carries. Next item on our agenda is the consideration of an airport contract for construction of airport fencing. This is something that had been carried over, the authority had reviewed from the engineer producing to them before. It's a contract that the state DOT has sent over that would need to be executed. It never has came before the board prior to today. This is a funding source that is available to produce a fence to go around the airport. The funding is for a total project cost of $1 million. The funding that would come from the Georgia Airport Aid funding would be $750,000. That would still leave a $250,000 requirement for the county to fund in order to complete that project, to put a fence up around the airport. The state has made sure to pass on the information that this is over a 2-year on state fiscal year. So it would start this July and go for a 2-year period. So it doesn't necessarily mean that all of that funding would be in year 1, it would be in year 2 as well. But with that, we do have the contract before us that has to be executed and returned to them if we do decide that we want to receive their match funding, which would still obligate us at that point in time to the $250,000 of local funding as well. And that's a decision we have to make if we want to place that investment, or do we want to focus the attention on the other priorities to get those accomplished as well. So with that, as our first official act with the airport now being directly under our responsibility is to consider this contract. Do we want to receive this funding and then provide the local match and agree to all of the FAA requirements, or do we want to hold off, finish the other projects and get those accomplished, which will be our A-West Tower, our terminal construction, some apron expansion, and then fencing. It's kind of an option of choosing the priorities in that capital improvement plan to move forward. So with that, I'll open it up for discussion or a motion from either of you, that if you have a sense of which direction you'd like to go. I'll let you.
I personally am of the opinion that we need to focus on what we've got. There's a lot going on over there, so I make a motion, we just let this one go.
All right, so we have a motion to not sign the contract, so that we can focus on the other items on the capital improvement plan.
Gladly second that.
All right, so I have a motion and a second, and an echo from the back. With that, do you have any other discussion or question?
I'm good.
I do think in the discussion portion, I will look and say, I don't believe that this is something that we need to not do in the future. I do believe any available funding needs to go through getting this terminal constructed so that we're no longer in a construction trailer. We're currently having to get this going. Would be my opinion to add into the discussion. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Motion carries that we do not sign the contract.
Throw the ball there, okay?
All right. Next item on the agenda is the consideration and approval of amendments of Article 3 entitled Authorities, Boards, and Committees, which is the establishment of an Airport Authority Board. This is an ordinance to amend Article 3 entitled Authorities, Boards, and Commissions of Chapter 2, Administration of the Code of Ordinances, Pickens County, Georgia, to create an Airport Advisory Board to advise the Board of Commissioners on the operations of the Pickens County Airport. I know that a draft of this has been provided for you to review prior to coming in tonight. A public hearing was conducted on the consideration of the ordinance. And with that, do I have a motion to approve the ordinance establishing the advisory board?
A motion to approve.
Second.
I have a move and a second. Any other discussion or questions on that? With none, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. That motion carries. Since it is an ordinance, this does require all three of us to sign. So I'm going to pass these through as we go. And after you sign it, if you just give that to Lisa.
Yes, sir.
With the establishment of an advisory board, I would like to make a recommendation, as the ordinance does state, that the chairman needs to make a recommendation to the board for the members to serve. On that advisory board, as it was described during the public hearing, it's a 7-member, with one of those members being a member of the Board of Commissioners. A minimum of 3 pilots, and the rest have to meet the other requirements. With that, these individuals have all been spoke to, vetted, in terms of verifying that the pilots are actually pilots. I will present my list of 7. So that you can do, and now also in the ordinance, it does state that the board would appoint a secretary to serve to participate, that would be a member of staff. So my recommendation will be to present Mark Christensen, who's currently serving on the Airport Authority prior to the dissolving, and have Mark serve as the chair of this board. Josh Pickens would be my recommendation to serve as a district commissioner, so that we can have someone to relay everything back to the Board of Commissioners. Tom Gray, who is a pilot, Kevin Lohner, who owns a hangar on the property, Mr. Wallace Reese, who is also a pilot, Tim Stansel, who's a pilot, Wendell Turner, who's a pilot, and Ms. Stacy McClure to serve as the secretary to work with the advisory board, so that it would free up our airport manager, Alexis, to present the information from the airport staff while that's going forward. That would be my recommendation for the members to begin this, and I would like to present that and ask for a motion that we approve the resolution establishing the initial members serving in a 1-year term.
I'm not doing it. My name's on it. I'll make a motion.
I will second it since his name is on there. So, we did feel like it would not be appropriate for me as chair to serve on that, because then it would create kind of a conflict between the staff side and the advisory board. From a staff point, we felt that way, so post-commissioner would be in there. So now that we have a motion and a second, do I have any discussion or questions from anybody other than Commissioner Tippins who refused me? No discussion or questions, all in favor? Aye. Sorry, sir.
Abstain.
Got outvoted. And then we'll work to get that. I know there's a quarterly meeting requirement. We'll work with the chair to get the dates so that we can get that all established and up and going. Other new business, consideration and approval of Amendment 4 entitled Finance of Chapter 2 of Administration. This is an ordinance to amend Article 4 for Finance of Chapter 2 entitled Administration of the Code of Ordinances, Pickens County. This was where the prior location of the fiscal year, which would then be moved into the next as well. Do I have a motion to approve the ordinance as it was presented?
So moved.
A second.
Move in a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. Motion carries. Wait till the fast drops before I try to read the next. The next item on our agenda is also dealing with finance. It's an ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances, Pickens County, Georgia, that is affected by adopting for inclusion therein a new chapter entitled Finance. This was what was discussed by our CFO earlier. With that, do I have a motion that we approve the ordinance establishing the finance ordinance for Chapter 3?
So moved.
Second.
Move in a second. Any discussion or questions? If none, all in favor?
Aye.
If none opposed? The ordinance is established. The next item on the agenda is item F, and that is the consideration and approval of the amendments to Chapter 38 entitled Land Development Standards. This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 38. The Code of Ordinances, Pickens County, Georgia, to enhance land development regulations in unincorporated Pickens County in order to protect and preserve public safety, health, welfare, and quality of life therein. This was presented here in the public hearing before, so with that, do I have a motion to approve the amendment to Chapter 38?
So moved.
I'll second.
Move in a second. Any discussion or questions? None, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Chapter 38 is amended. So, next item on the agenda is the consideration and approval of amendments of Chapter 67 entitled Land Use Intensity Districts and Map of the Code of Ordinances, Pickens County, Georgia, to enhance land use regulations in unincorporated Pickens County in order to protect and preserve the public safety, health, welfare, and quality of life therein. With that, do I have a motion for approval of the amendment to Chapter 67?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Move in a second. Any discussion or questions? With none, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Motion carries.
Oh, we're in a house up here.
I think that's the last one you actually have to sign. The next item on the agenda is the consideration and approval of a restructure of the internal organization of Pickens County government in 22, I believe. Either 21 or 22. I was trying to see if I had it right here, but I don't have. We did come before the prior board. I think neither of you were on the board yet, in order to present the current flow chart for how the organization of Pickens County government was set. And that was where we established two directors, public safety director and an administrative side director as well. With the addition of the airport now being a department that would fall underneath one of our directors, the presentation, and I know that this was provided, the resolution was provided to each of you on the board, was to establish the elevation of our CFO to serve in a director capacity, and that would be the director of internal operations. Then we would continue to have a director of external agency operations, and then a director of public safety. So it's essentially moving some of the internal departments under the internal operations agency, which would be under Ms. Miranda McDowell, who would move from just a department head into a director role that would oversee finance, human resource, building and grounds, payroll, risk management, EMS billing, and information technology. Public safety would continue to oversee fire and rescue, emergency 911, county marshal, animal welfare, and emergency management. And then external operations would be public works, water, public parks and recreation, solid waste, planning and development, Pickens County Airport, and special projects assigned to be addressed as well. And it took all I could do to go through that without trying to say that we were putting the airport under the public safety side of things, but I didn't feel like having to deal with the hard issue of the individual had. But since we did establish it by resolution when we initially did it, rather than making the change to the flow chart, we wanted to bring it back before the board for another resolution in order to divide those responsibilities back into that capacity. So with that, do I have a motion to approve the resolution establishing the order for which the internal organization will be in place?
If I make this motion, are you gonna throw something at me? I don't care. Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a movement and a second. Any discussion or question? With none, all in favor?
Aye. Good luck.
She's already doing a significant chunk of it at this point. This just kind of frees it up to where everything behind the secure door is hers and everything outside the secure door is Bill's. So, that separates those two slightly. All right, next item on our agenda is the consideration and approval of a memorandum of understanding with Dawson County for radio system communications. We received a form of communication with a resolution from Dawson County as they're converting to an 800 system for their radio communications, seeking each county and surrounding to have an MOU in place in order to work with those trunking talk groups. Upon review of the language, we did, after receive it, put it on so that we can continue the relationship with our neighboring communities. But upon review of the ordinance in further detail, it only applies to an 800 megahertz trunking talk group, which we do not currently have. We're not on an 800 system. Hopefully one day we will have the ability to get there, but it is not an inexpensive adventure to tackle. With that, with us not having one in place, I don't see the necessity for this MOU at this time until we move to an MOU. I don't think that's in a negative way in any way, shape, or fashion, but since we don't have a system that's compliant with theirs, I would make a recommendation that we do not sign the MOU at this time. We wait until we have a compatible system and then sign one at that time. So my motion would be not to engage the MOU, which is rare since we put it on the agenda. But after studying it and researching it more, I don't see a necessary need for it at this point in time. So that would be my motion. Do I have a second on that? Then we can open it up for discussion.
I'll second.
All right, so I have a motion and a second. Now we can turn into the discussion portion of it. I saw you wanted to talk. I was just trying to get us to the point where it's there.
So the MOU gives us the ability to talk on their radio system, am I right?
Through their trunking talk groups, if we had 800 systems in
In a
place.
mutual aid response type scenario, if we go into Dawson County is what we're essentially talking about.
Not necessarily if we go into, it's just to talk to Dawson County over the radio. But we don't have a system that you can talk to them on that new 800 system.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
In order for us to continue talking on the other channels, we can continue talking, but we don't have an 800 system in place. The only 800 radios that we have communicate through Cherokee's talk group with Cherokee. They're only programmed to have Cherokee in those particular.
So if we approve this MOU, could we program Dawson into those existing radios?
I'm gonna defer that one to Sloan.
My understanding is they're gonna keep their VHF as well, are they not?
I don't see anything in what they've provided.
There's nothing with the MOU, but my understanding is they're gonna keep that. So we only have like, I think 6 radios in the county that could even talk to them.
And I will clarify with my motion that I made. There's no harm in engaging the MOU. It does not hurt anything, but there's also no benefit at this point in time to have it in place. So if we need to go a different direction and we want to vote down the original motion and then another motion be made, there's no problem with engaging them in the MOU. So
Yeah, my only concern was, if we have it, it doesn't hurt anything, we can go ahead and do it, and we don't have to worry about it later, but if it's better to hold off, I'm cool with that too. I'm not hard to get along with it.
well, with that, if y'all, do y'all want to go ahead and deny the original motion? We'll put it up to a vote. You have the ability to deny it. We'll make another motion to approve it and go from that. In speaking with Ms. Easterwood, she said, we don't have 800. I don't see the need. Chief Prather, I think he left just a moment ago. Chief Prather had a similar comment. We don't have 800, so there's no need in having the MOU as it's been presented, because the MOU is specific to an 800 system.
And if we did get one later, we could go back and ask for another one anyway.
If we got one, if we
Yeah,
go ahead
at
and
any
we're going
time.
to do those MOUs on our own, so.
Right. So,
I'm good with what you got.
all right, well then I'm gonna put the motion that was presented and seconded, which was to not sign the MOU, up for a vote, and then we'll go from there. That's how it goes. So all in favor of not signing? Okay, with no vote?
Well, yeah, I thought you were gonna say more. I was waiting for you to finish the sentence. I'm with you.
So,
Young lady.
none opposed to that motion, so that means we will let them know that we're not gonna sign it at this time. So, I know that got complicated, I apologize. Get simpler for a minute. The next one's just the approval of minutes. We do have 3 sets of minutes. Each member was present, so I believe we can vote on all 3 sets at the same time because we were all 3 present for each of the ones that were presented. Minutes were provided by the county clerk to each member to review prior to coming in tonight. The April 21st regular meeting, May 5th called meeting, and May 5th executive session minutes. I know each were able to be reviewed. Hopefully you've had a chance to, and if so, do I have a motion to approve all 3 sets of minutes?
So moved.
I'll second the motion.
All right, with a move and a second, any discussion or question? No. All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. The minutes are approved. Sorry, I worded it wrong. I will apologize. All right, next item is to move into our rezones that we have for tonight's meeting. The first rezone that we have is RZ 190909. It's the application received from Mr. Charles Hoetink, 119 Inland Drive. It's a request to move a 1 acre portion of a 30.6 acre tract from ag to estate residential. The Planning and Development Office did receive the application from Mr. Hoetink to make this change, and the intended purpose of the rezone request, if approved, was to add an additional 1 acre to an existing lot to create a 3 acre estate residential lot. The hearing was conducted before the Planning Commission on April the 14th. Following a staff recommendation of approval, the Planning Commission voted 6 yes, 0 no to approve the rezone request. With that, do I have a motion to follow the Planning Commission's recommendation?
I'll make a motion to approve that it does have the condition that it has to be joined to the other ER parcel, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
It does.
I'll second the motion.
I have a move and a second. Any further discussion? With none, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. Motion carries. The next rezone that we have before us is RZ 190904 from Mr. James Dean. It's on Big Ridge Road. It's a request to move a 2.2 acre parcel from rural residential to suburban residential. The intended purpose, if approved, was to create 2 buildable lots. The public hearing was conducted on the 14th of April. After reviewing the application from the staff report recommending that the rezone be denied, the Pickens County Planning Commission voted 6 yes, 0 no to deny the rezone request as it was presented. With that, do I have a motion to follow the Planning Commission's recommendation for denial?
Make a motion that we do uphold the planning commission recommendation to deny.
Okay.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion or question? With none, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. Next rezone that we have is conditional use 190908 from Mr. Dan Poole on behalf of Poole's Farm LLC, located at 8269 Highway 53 East for an event space. The total parcel property is 367 acres. The intended purpose of the permit request is to allow for Jeep Fest, paintball, rodeo, model airplane club, and church-sponsored events. I think that some of the events started to grow and the application was received. The public hearing was conducted on April the 14th, where the staff recommended approval of the request, and the Planning Commission voted 6 yes to approve the conditional use permit. The following conditions were included in that request. That was to be a conditional use permit for the property. Applicant will work with staff to ensure any safety protocols are adhered to, parking requirements or applicable requirements are met. So with that, we do have a recommendation from the Planning Commission for approval. I'll open it up for a motion from the board.
I'll make a motion to approve adding the condition that, with the exception of the rodeo weekend and the Jeep Fest, that amplified noise is not allowed from dusk until dawn.
So excluding rodeo and Jeep Fest. amplified noise will not be permitted. Dusk till dawn.
Yes.
So we do have a motion for approval of the process with the additional inclusion is to exclude Jeep Fest and rodeo, but amplified noise will not be permitted from dusk to dawn. So that is the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second for discussion.
All right, so I have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions?
I said that correctly, didn't I? From dusk until dawn? Yeah,
What time is dusk?
exactly. That's,
30 to no more than 30.
yeah.
Can we narrow that down possibly?
I'll go from. I don't know what time they want to restart. That was, I talked to Mr. Poole about it, and he was good with dusk till dawn. But I don't know what time they would want to restart in the morning. I know he'd be fine with like 8 o'clock, but.
Like, you're excluding Jeep Fest, right? So
Exactly. I mean,
Excluding Jeep Fest and rodeos, this is
Yeah,
to
that was just
exclude any
two
future
concerns.
concerts or any other events that may
Yes.
occur, that are attempted to occur on the property, so that during the overnight, at night. So, do you have a recommendation on the language? I saw you make a face, so.
Beer bill.
Well, it's Bill, I can see his face, you were hiding, so.
If I don't know his recommendation.
Well, Josh, your language to me was dawn to dusk.
Other way,
Sun
night
up
is
to
what
sundown is what we want to allow.
But it should be
Oh,
dusk
wait,
to dawn.
That's what he said.
Did I say it backwards after all that?
It is now.
Okay, I'm trying to say that it's not allowed at night. That's what I'm trying
You
to
said
say.
it right. You said it right.
I will throw out there that there is a legal time, because if you're hauling heavy equipment, you have to be off the road 30 minutes before dusk and can't move.
So it follows.
So there is a legal time, it's not just arbitrary.
Okay.
I'll second.
So you second, I've already seconded, the discussion is here, we have a motion, now we have a second, we've had discussion. So, all in favor of the motion to approve with the additional condition that amplified noise from dusk to dawn is prohibited with the exclusion of the rodeo and Jeep Fest weekends? Thank God. All right, next is another conditional use request from Kevin and Karyn Smith. It's located at 834 Worley Crossroads for an event space 20-acre parcel. The application for the request is for an intended purpose of allowing for small events, farm tours, and cooking classes. The public hearing was conducted on the 14th day of April, where staff recommended approval, and the planning commission voted 6 yes for the conditional use with the imposed conditions that were provided from the applicant, and those conditions include, and they are lengthy, so I will make sure to go through and read each of those. The conditions for approval of the conditional use permit were: cooking and related classes will be held on Saturdays from 11 to 1 with a maximum of 12 participants, conducted twice a month. Sunset yoga. Golly, we're getting into sunsets and dusk and dawn. Sunset yoga sessions will take place on Saturdays from 5:30 to 6:45 p.m. with a maximum of 20 attendees. Farm tours will be organized no more than 3 times per week between the hours of 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. Special events will include vintage market days scheduled for October on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. No lodging accommodations will be provided, but food vendors may be present with alcohol prohibited. Cleanup must be completed by Sunday with live music only permitted till 10 p.m. and all lighting must be turned off by that time. Jeep Fest will feature an off-site area for attendees to engage with the community and experience the farm with all activities, including live music only allowed till 10 p.m. Those were the conditions that were presented from the applicant to the planning commission, and that were included in what was provided for their recommended approval. So with that, do I have a motion that we accept the planning commission's recommendation for approval with the conditions as they were read?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions? If none, all in favor? None opposed, motion carries. The next is a rezone request, RZ 190911, applications for Mr. Brandon and Brett Roland, locations at 724 Highway 136 connector. This is a recommendation for 34.72 acre tract and a 1.9 acre rural residential tract that are side by side, be considered for rezone to estate residential. The intended purpose of the rezone request, if approved, is to develop a 7-lot subdivision. Public hearing was held on the 14th day of April, 2025. The staff report recommended approval. Pickens County Planning Commission voted 6 yes, 0 no for approval of the rezone request of the tract. So with that, do I have a motion to follow the Planning Commission's recommendation for approval?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? With none, all in favor?
Aye.
And all opposed?
No.
So we have 1-1. That leaves me with a tie, and I will vote in favor of approval with the Planning Commission's recommendation. That brings us to any guest comments. So we will open up any guest comments at this time.
Thank you for your patience. Lord have mercy.
It hasn't been a long meeting, but
I'm hungry.
So, yes, sir.
I want to ask a question about something that wasn't on your agenda. Okay, so I've heard through the grapevine that there's a vote coming soon on Bentry about their desire to sell or to develop 26 acres of land and build 50 lots on it roughly, so basically a half acre. That would have to come to you all for approval, is that correct? Even if they vote to do it?
So, because Bentry is an SRPC community, the part that would have to come before us is a change to their master plan. The master plan that was approved when Bentry was developed and built established the SRPC, but in the master plan it defined what went where, which was a campground in that particular location. So any change to that master plan would have to come before the Planning Commission and the Board of Commissioners for approval for that master plan to be changed. That also brings the question as to how that process takes place, because if they're looking to sell, it's no longer a part of that tree community, so it's no longer a part of their original master plan. So that adds a complication, because on its own, 26 acres won't qualify to be an SRPC community. It has to be a part of the larger community in order for that to happen. So there would have to be that process that would have to take place. And they would have to make sure that they could meet any septic or zoning or septic or sewer requirements. I know staff had met with several of the individuals there before that process was put out, and these were provided at that point in time. In our May 5th meeting, there was a vote that prohibited that type of shared septic access. So the particular type of septic was not approved as of May 5th, because that was a prohibited use overall, not specific to any individual, but overall that type of septic for any future that went in. So there's obviously some action that would come before us at some point in time if that were to pass. I believe that they've already set the ballots out in terms of an internal vote in Bentry to authorize the board to continue moving forward, but there would be some challenges still that would have to be met if it did occur. Hopefully that answers.
How y'all feel
I know
about
it's several kind of specifics, but it would require a few different things that have not happened yet before any final approval.
Things by approval by you all, those things.
On the master plan. Zoning wise, it's already zoned correctly, but the master plan would require, and any density requirement like that would require for sewer and septic, obviously is gonna meet the hurdles on anything that septic and sewer, because environmental health requires a 1 acre lot for a septic system. To have a shared septic system would allow for that, but that was recently prohibited. So,
Okay.
that would have to come. Hopefully that answers that.
I think so.
Okay,
We'll
all
be
right.
back.
Any other public comments? With that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?